The story begins with our MC, Isaac von Goethe, receiving gifts from the maids and workers for becoming the youngest person recommended to enter the Royal Academy at just 10 years old. Isaac is considered to be a genius, thanks to all the things he's been able to achieve in just a little time. Celebrations rock the house so much that the nanny even bakes Isaac all of his favorite snacks. Even the closest maid to Isaac, Hans, brought him a lot of stuff to thank him for helping his son when he was sick. Even Isaac's younger brother, Jonas, was there to play him a song with his lute. Everything was going so well until Isaac screamed out of his dream in horror. Surprisingly, it is now an older Isaac who is just remembering the good old times that he had. The room where he wakes up has no sense of nobility and looks more like a slum. Just then, one of his aides, Lucas, enters the room, and from how Isaac is sitting and panting, he realizes that he must have had a bad dream. Isaac admits that he did, revealing that he dreamt about the past, and Lucas asks him how far into the past. Isaac mentions that it was about 20 years in the past, and Lucas urges him to forget about the past and enjoy the fresh cheese he just made him. Lucas lets him know that once he is done, they are going to do the sword training that they missed the day before. To know what happened, the story takes a quick glance into the past when Isaac was 10 years old and was just a month away from entering the Royal Academy. After the celebrations, he suddenly caught a strange flu, and the flu lasted for 3 months. When he showed no signs that he was going to recover, his father, Count Goethe, called for a scholar from the magic tower. The scholar informs his father that Isaac is suffering from a special constitution. Basically, every living being has its own innate mana vessel, and mana moves at a speed suitable for the size of that vessel. However, Isaac's mana circulation is abnormal. Apparently, it is too fast and violent, and at the rate it is going, the vessels will shatter. Not long after this, the mana inside Isaac burst out like a broken dam, and the moment it collided with the external mana, it caused a mana explosion that led to the death of many people, while others also got injured. His mana would calm down, but repeatedly explode without warning, causing great anxiety among the people in the mansion. When the incident finally tore up Jonas's right arm, Isaac decided that he had had enough, and he begged his father to lock him up in a place where no one could reach so that he wouldn't be able to hurt anyone. It turns out that he was 15 when he requested to be locked up, and he has been there ever since. Now, in the present, he sees Lucas coughing, but it wasn't a dry cough because he coughed up blood. The moment Isaac sees this, he realizes that Lucas is suffering from mana poisoning, and this is because he has stayed by his side for too long. Isaac rushes over to Lucas to check on him, and he urges him to take a rest for at least a month, but Lucas refuses, saying there is no one who would attend to Isaac's needs if he decides to take a rest. In addition, he teases Isaac, reminding him that he has no friends. Isaac also teases him, saying he might just kick him out for insulting him. But Lucas assures him that he has nothing to worry about because he hasn't gotten harmed even once since he's been by his side. Lucas assures Isaac that he won't be able to find someone else like him, and Isaac points out the fact that Lucas might die any time if he is not careful. Isaac sends Lucas off, telling him that he needs to meditate, and Lucas leaves humbly, telling Isaac that it's been a pleasure being by his side. Later on, Isaac suffers one of his usual flashbacks, and in it, he sees Lucas's bloodied body after one of his mana explosions. Isaac jumps back to reality on his bed, and this is when it dawns on him that Lucas, too, is dead. Apparently, after he left when he coughed up blood, he didn't visit for over a year, and it was later that Isaac heard the news of his death through his father. That very day, there was another mana explosion, forcing him to completely lock his door. Isaac blames himself, saying he should have kept his distance and shouldn't have gotten attached to anyone. He believes that his close ones would have been safe if he had been a bit colder towards them. Isaac decided to adopt this method, and years later, even after refusing to eat, he realizes that he is still alive. The bread that is always dropped for him has grown mold, and when he finally decides to start eating again, he just dusts off the mold and bites down on the bread. At this point, he looks really old, even though he is still a middle-aged man. He dedicated himself to studying magic in a bid to overcome the condition that is affecting him. After reading for so long, he has learned everything from the books, and there is nothing more to know. What is left is inspiration and intuition. Several years later, Isaac finds a clue to overcome his fated problem. At this point, he is already 71 years old and has dedicated himself solely to research. Sometime later, he hears his brother's voice at the door, and he is shocked. Isaac speaks to him coldly, asking him why he is there. Jonas asks if he can come in, but Isaac refuses, telling Jonas to speak from where he is. The two then sit on opposite sides of the door and talk with their backs against it. Isaac asks Jonas how he's been, and Jonas replies that it is a really long story. Jonas asks Isaac if he knows that the day is the anniversary of their father's death. Isaac asks him how their father passed away, and he replies that it is a long story. He asks Isaac if he would like to hear it, and Isaac tells him to go ahead. Jonas gladly starts the story with what happened 30 years ago, which was a battle that broke out between the first and second princes over who was going to succeed the ruler. Hours later, Jonas finally finishes his story, and Isaac admits that his younger brother is really good with storytelling because he even lost track of time. Jonas teases his brother, saying he would have just become a poet if he had known, but it might have been hard since he can only use one hand. Isaac hears this and he apologizes to Jonas for what happened. Jonas tells his brother that the whole family hated him. However, they also missed him so much, and they love him to death. Just then, Jonas says it's going to be a shame that he wasn't able to see his brother's face for the last time. Isaac is confused by this, and Jonas mentions that when the war was happening, a gate actually opened, and monsters from another dimension emerged, committing a lot of atrocities. Isaac gets up in shock when he hears this, and he asks Jonas if he is fine. Jonas starts to stammer, while regretting that he didn't come earlier. Just then, Isaac notices blood coming from under the door, and he quickly opens the door, only to find a sword sticking out of his brother's belly. Jonas crashes to the ground, and Isaac watches his brother's dead body in horror. He couldn't believe that his brother was dying, but was still able to talk that long. He then carries his brother on his shoulder, and as he walks up the basement stairs, tears run down his face because of how light his brother is, showing just how much he has starved. After so many years, Isaac returns to the surface, and what he meets is total destruction. The mansion is in ruins, and a monster's body can be seen lying in the hall. As he steps outside, Isaac notices that it is winter because it is snowing. Since he won't be able to bury his brother in that season, he promises to bury him when it is spring, so he can use the family cemetery. Isaac also concludes that this is when he is going to die. Spring finally comes, and as promised, Isaac buries his brother. While standing over his brother's grave, he raises his hand and is able to produce a fireball. Isaac lets off a short smile because he has finally been able to do it after so long. He has been researching how he can overcome his special constitution for so long, but he has finally done it. In his left hand is a broken runestone, and since he has seen that he could overcome his special constitution, Isaac figures out that he can finally die too. He wonders if he would be forgiven for every pain that he has caused. He regrets the fact that he didn't start his research earlier and wonders if things could have changed for him. With this, Isaac crashes to the ground and dies. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice calling his name, and this turns out to be Hans's voice. Isaac doesn't want to believe his ears because Hans died years ago, and when he opens his eyes, he is in his young body. Hans stands by the window and opens it because Isaac is drenched in sweat and looks pale. Isaac sits up, wondering if he is dreaming, while also assuming that his life is flashing before his eyes at the time of death. Hans walks to the window to see a young Jonas playing and stressing the maids out. Isaac lets out a good smile when it finally dawns on him that he is not dreaming, but he has somewhat returned to the past. He is now faced with a new life where he is expected to break free from the shackles of his past. As he stands by the window, Isaac has a flashback. Isaac once heard the maids in the other room complaining about his condition and how it always causes trouble. They are left to clean the mess that he makes, but they are always scared of when his mana will explode again. Hans soon hears this, and just as he is about to move into the room to scold them, Isaac stops him, telling Hans that they are not actually wrong. In fact, Isaac tells Hans to stop coming to see him too. Hans has a bandage wrapped around his head, and Isaac reminds him that this happened because he was next to him. Hans kneels in front of Isaac to comfort him, telling him that he is wrong about the whole thing. Hans lets Isaac know that he still cares about him, but it appears that he is going through a difficult time, and once it passes, it will no longer be a big deal. Hans spoke brightly back then, but this was how he also lost his life due to one of his mana explosions. Now that he's been given a second chance, Isaac wonders what he is supposed to do. Isaac decides to take a bold step and he coldly tells Hans to leave. Hans thinks Isaac is joking until Isaac makes it clear that he doesn't want to see him around. Hans reluctantly leaves, and even though it hurts Isaac to do this, he knows that being close to Hans will only put him in danger. As Hans leaves the room, he urges Isaac not to try to shoulder all the responsibility himself. Hans tells him that it is okay for him to trust them sometimes. After he leaves, Isaac realizes that Hans never said this in his dream, but then he slaps his face to confirm that he is truly not in a dream. The slap hurts him so much that it confirms to him that he is back in the past. He wonders how he died in his past life, but he decides to shove this aside because it doesn't matter if it is a dream or reality. What he needs to do is to prevent himself from having a mana explosion ever again. Apparently, in the past, there was someone who suffered the same condition as him, and this person was Zeke von Goethe. He was able to reach a realm where no human had reached before, which is a 10th class mage. This person was Isaac's great-great-grandfather, and he was only able to learn about him from the ancestral records that his father passed down to him when he lived in the underground cell. After years of detailed study, he discovered a way to overcome the special constitution, which is with a particular rune stone. Isaac then carves a pattern from his research onto a mana stone to create the specific rune stone that he needs. Isaac grabs the stone and realizes just how good it is to be young again because his hands used to shake before, but he is easily holding the stone firm. Apparently, to prevent the side effect of his special constitution, which is the mana explosion, the vessel that holds his mana must withstand the endlessly circulating mana. However, Isaac's mana flows so insanely fast and violently that the vessel cannot withstand it. A normal person is supposed to die the moment it shatters, but for some unknown reason, Isaac's vessel restores itself as if nothing happened. This is basically why his vessel can explode 10 or even 20 times and he is still alive. The runestone he just carved intentionally damages the mana pathways, and a continuous impact is applied to the damaged area, which leads to a new pathway opening. This is how the shock of the violent mana ends up getting dispersed. However, the success rate is quite low, and he barely succeeded right before he died. The small flame he made before he died was proof of his success, and he wonders if this will work this time around. Isaac tries to create a small fireball just like back then, but to his shock, he unleashes a flame so huge that it scares the hell out of him. Isaac cannot believe the amount of power that is flowing through him, and when he takes a look at the runestone, it still remains intact. Isaac finally figures out that his pathways have increased to 3. Each of the pathways has a different size and property, and he can manifest 3 magic spells simultaneously. Isaac cannot believe that it actually worked, but he quickly controls himself because this is not his goal. His goal is to prevent any mana explosions from happening, and for this, he figures out that 3 pathways are not enough. He realizes that he has to use more magic more often to increase the pathways. In addition, this will help minimize the burden placed on his mana vessel, but until then, he can't let anyone stay by his side. In fact, there won't be any exception whatsoever. Later on, Isaac is studying when Hans shows up in the room with a smile on his face, telling Isaac that he has brought him his favorite food, but Isaac is forced to remind him that he already told him that he doesn't want to see him. Hans tries to persuade Isaac, reminding him that he hasn't been eating well lately, so he should have at least one piece. Isaac cannot believe that Hans is not ready to listen to him, and to make it worse, he is wearing such a cute face. Isaac then asks Hans how old he is, and Hans replies that he is currently 12 years old. Since he is still at a young age, he figures out that he is at an age where he has to behave like a normal child. Isaac takes a bite out of the bread and he realizes that Nanny must have been the one who made the bread. He loves the bread so much, and he realizes just how much he's missed the bread. Isaac asks Hans where Nanny is because he hasn't seen her that day, and Hans reveals that Nanny's son, Hinder, has pneumonia. When he hears this, Isaac stops eating and talks about how nice his family is because another family would not allow Nanny to head home to take care of her son. Isaac takes his time before asking Hans if Hinder is the only one who came down with pneumonia, and Hans reveals that all of the children already have it. Upon hearing this, Isaac finally remembers what is happening. The incident that happened around this time was the Black Goose Village mass pneumonia incident. Nanny lost her son in the incident, and she had to live with a huge sense of loss until the day she died. It turns out that she also died from one of Isaac's mana explosion incidents. Remembering this terrible incident, Isaac figures out that it would be bad if the woman went through this again. Isaac remembers something important and immediately asks Hans what sort of monster or monsters were recently subjugated in the Nanny's village. After hearing Hans's answer, Isaac packed up and vanished to the Black Goose Village. Hans had told Isaac that he didn't get a good look at the monster, but it appears that people from the Magic Tower came to buy it as research material. However, from what he was able to see, it appeared to be a giant spider that was covered in silver fur. From Hans's description, Isaac realizes that he was talking about a winter spider. Winter spiders are not that strong, but they do form large swarms due to their incredible breeding rate. The real issue is that the winter spiders possess a highly dense mana that causes one to suffer from mana poisoning when one is exposed to it. This acts like a poison that slowly suffocates the affected person. Isaac figures out that the children in the village were poisoned by the mana emitted by the winter spiders. Isaac makes his way into the woods to gather herbs because he knows all about mana poisoning. However, it is still something new in this era, which is why they all believe that it is pneumonia. After gathering loads of herbs, he believes that he has enough to feed the children to alleviate their symptoms. However, its healing effects will only be temporary, and to prevent a relapse of the symptoms, the winter spiders must be completely wiped out. Isaac knows that it would have been nice to ask his parents for help, but his father is usually stationed at the border fortress, and his mother is currently traveling the continent, searching for a cure for his special constitution. Isaac knows that he can't wait around till they get back, because Hinder would have died by then. Soon afterward, the nanny is watching over her son when she hears a knock on her door. She walks to the door to open, and to her surprise, she finds Isaac. Isaac is so exhausted from his travel and the effort to gather herbs that he falls into the woman's arms. The nanny asks him if something happened at the estate, which is why he left at that late hour. Isaac reveals that he is only worried because she hasn't come to work for days, and he came to check on her. The nanny tells Isaac that she might not allow him to come in because Hinder has pneumonia and he might catch it too. To convince the woman, Isaac ties a piece of clothing over his nose, but even with this, the nanny is still reluctant to let him in. Isaac hands her the bag full of herbs and straight up walks into the house. He tells the nanny to crush the herbs, mash them, put them in a pot, brew them twice, let them cool, and then feed them to Hinder. Isaac heads to the room where Hinder is resting, and from the bluish spots all over his face, Isaac confirms that he is suffering from mana poisoning. Isaac calls Hinder's name, and he weakly answers. The first thing Hinder tells Isaac is that he should not fire his mother because she isn't able to come to work because of him. Isaac pats Hinder's forehead, assuring him that he is not going to fire his mom because he is the only one who sneaks him wheat bread, so he should just focus on getting better. Later on, Isaac has a hunter lead him to an abandoned mine. Upon arriving at the entrance of the cave, Isaac asks the dude if he is sure that this is the limestone cave, and the man assures him that it is. Isaac pays the dude his fare and tells him that he is going to handle the rest from that point forward. As he leaves, the old man urges Isaac to be careful because people have gone missing around the cave in the past. Apparently, winter spiders prefer limestone caves, and since this is the only limestone cave in the area, Isaac believes that the winter spiders are currently nesting in the area. However, before going inside the cave, he figures out that it would be better if he prepares well. He remembers that he can currently manifest 3 spells simultaneously, which puts him on par with a second-class mage. However, he can't overexert himself because his mana vessel might just shatter. In addition, he can't recklessly use magic since he doesn't know how many spiders are in there. Isaac then looks around and he finds exactly what he needs, which is the frost belladonna. The berries of the plant are usually diluted and used as a paralytic or anesthetic, but they are a deadly poison to winter spiders. Isaac cannot believe the irony that they live in the same habitat as their lethal weakness. After gathering so much belladonna, Isaac realizes that it would have been better if he had brought some gloves because his hands have swollen already, showing just how potent the poison is. Since he already made plenty of rune stones back when he was at the estate, he figures out that it is time for him to get going. Upon entering the cave, he realizes that there is a ledge and it goes straight down into a dark center. He looks around to see if there is a way for him to get down there, and fortunately for him, he finds a ladder that goes down. Isaac grabs the ladder and starts climbing down, and by the time he reaches the bottom, he is already exhausted. However, with the look of things, he realizes that he has found the right place. There are skeletons on the floor, and they are both from monsters and humans. Isaac wonders if the human bones are from the missing people that the hunter mentioned. Just then, he hears rustling around him, and he immediately creates a bunch of fireballs to surround himself. Thanks to the fire, he spots the spiders in the distance staring at him. However, he is not entirely scared because he knows that the fire will keep the spiders away since they hate fire. However, he has to prepare just before they decide to swarm him. Isaac ties a piece of clothing around his nose before he starts anything. Once he is ready, he sets the belladonna on fire and the smoke from it starts to fill the cave. As the smoke hits the spiders, they react to it negatively, and seeing just how irritated the spiders are by the smoke, Isaac figures out that it is finally time for him to begin the hunt. In the past, Isaac had stood by his window to watch one of the citizens confront his father about the bad things that were happening in the territory. He blames him because he is the lord of the territory and should have done something to avert the whole mess, but instead he believes that he has failed the people. The whole issue was mainly about the Black Goose Village, and because of how noisy the whole thing is, Isaac started considering a move to the basement. Since the basement is quieter and has fewer people around, he can just focus more on researching his special constitution there. In addition, he considers covering the wall with dimetridium because it is a material with high magic resistance to help contain his mana explosions. After talking to himself for too long, he finally called Hans's name, only to realize that Hans was dead. Now, in the present, as he sits in the cave, he wonders why he has to remember these terrible old memories. He looks around and realizes that the belladonna is seriously weakening the spiders. And since he can't feed the poison to the spiders directly, all he can do is burn the flower and let the smoke spread so it can paralyze them until they suffocate. However, this method is not flawless because he won't be safe from it too, which is why he wrapped a wet piece of clothing around his face as a primary filter. Any poison that slips into his body will be purified with the mana inside his body. He had also created a compressed fireball, which he uses as his defense to keep the spiders away. He is basically using 3 types of magic at the same time, which are purification, fire magic, and phase shift on the fire magic. He is able to cast all 3 spells simultaneously through 3 mana circuits, which could also be referred to as multi-circuit. It was thanks to this that he could buy time for the spiders to weaken, and once they are paralyzed, Isaac finishes them with a fireball. He notices that the survivors are running in one direction, and from a closer observation, he realizes that there is water where they are heading. However, there is still no hope for them because they are going to be burned to a crisp. At the same time, he is scared that he might actually suffocate if he is not careful, so he has to end everything quickly. Isaac then takes off his coat before heading to the water side. However, the moment he gets there, he starts regretting his decision to have left the coat because of how cold the whole area is. The temperature in the room has dropped so low that it could form ice, and just then he raises his head to see that the entire ceiling of the cave is filled with spider eggs. The moment he sees this, he remembers something important that sends shivers down his spine. He continues investigating the area while throwing fireballs around to make lightning for himself. Not long after this, his fears come to life as he finds himself face to face with a giant spider, which is the winter spider queen. A cold sweat trickles down his face as he trembles in fear, and without hesitation, the monster attacks him. Isaac manages to leap into the distance to avoid getting impaled by the monster's claws. He lands hard on the icy floor, causing him to groan in pain, but he immediately gets back on his feet while berating himself for always jinxing his luck. Unlike the other winter spiders, the Spider Queen is a monster that has fire resistance and even exhales frost. This is the very reason why they are called winter spiders. With fear running through his body, Isaac hurls fireballs at the spider, but it doesn't really affect the monster. Isaac is not surprised by this because he doesn't expect the spider to just burn up and die like the other spiders. Isaac knows that he would be a dead man if the Spider Queen weren't slow. However, he still has a big problem, and this is the fact that his body is slowly reaching its limit. With a 12-year-old body that has no combat experience, he knows that it is natural for him to be exhausted. To make it worse, he stayed up all night and then used magic all day. Isaac soon realizes that no one is coming to save him, and he has to get over his fear. He starts to remember the sacrifices the nanny has made just for him to be comfortable. Apparently, wheat doesn't even grow in the northern region where they are, but the nanny travels to a distant city every week just to get high-quality wheat for him to be able to eat soft bread. Upon remembering this, Isaac pulls himself together, and he decides that he is going to ask the nanny to make him a lot of bread when he gets back home. Isaac reaches for his shovel and drops his backpack as he prepares to engage the queen spider head-on because even if it is a queen, it is still a bug. Isaac drops his backpack and rushes toward the queen with his shovel. Using the queen's slow movement against her, Isaac strikes her head with the shovel, leaving a hole in it. However, this is not enough to kill the queen as he gets dragged underneath the queen monster. Nonetheless, Isaac refuses to let go of the monster's leg. After a brief deliberation on what to do to take down the monster, he figures out that he has to use a different approach. He creates a fireball which he compresses and then compresses even further until the flame turns blue. Once it is powerful enough for what he wants, he releases the compressed blue flame into the spider's belly. Just as he wanted, the flame starts to cook the insides of the Spider Queen. As the spider shakes with its life leaving its body, Isaac tries to pull out his hand, but he finds it difficult to do so because the spider won't stay still. After trying so hard, he finally gets to pull out his arm. Isaac crashes to the ground and he hits his head. However, the blue flame is enough to take down the spider and even burn a block of ice. Later on, Isaac hears familiar voices around him, and these are Hans and the nanny's voices. He hears them as they talk about how he went into the abandoned mine, which caused him to hurt himself. This is when it dawns on Isaac that he actually defeated the Winter Spider Queen, and after this, he fell unconscious when he hit his head on the ground. However, he woke up after this and barely made it out of the abandoned mine and back to the village. After this, he ran into Hans, who was loitering at the village entrance, and he just fell asleep in his arms. Now that he is awake, Isaac hears the nanny telling Hans that after she did what Isaac told him, Hinder was completely cured. Hans glazes Isaac, saying this is just how he is, because he might have gotten insensitive after the mana explosion, but his good heart never left him. Isaac almost explodes from blushing when he hears this, and he is forced to sit up so they can know that he is already awake. The two are shocked to see this, and he asks them how long he was asleep. Hans tells him that he was out for about half a day, and she asks him if he is fine. He replies that he is good and the pain is a bit bearable. The woman freaks out when she hears this, asking Isaac what he means by bearable. She demands to know why he went to such a dangerous place alone, and he calmly replies that he fell while trying to gather some nearby herbs. Isaac knows that he obviously can't tell them that he killed a monster because there is no way they are going to believe that a 12-year-old like him did, so it would be better for him to just come up with an excuse. Isaac then asks the nanny how Hinder is doing, and she replies that he is much better after she gave him the herbs that he prescribed. In fact, the other kids in the village are all doing well. Isaac is glad to hear this, and he figures out that it would be better to keep the mana poisoning a secret because if the higher-ups find out, scholars would be brought in. It will definitely become a problem if the winter spider corpses in the abandoned mine are discovered. The nanny asks Isaac how he knows about the herbs, and he lies that he read about them in a book. Isaac then suggests that they forget about the matter, and he tells Hans that it is time for them to go. Hans lets him know that it is not proper for them to go yet because it is snowy outside. However, Isaac reminds Hans that he is going to be in a lot of trouble if they find out that he left the estate under his watch. Hans quickly agrees to this, and as they are about to leave, the nanny gives Isaac a basket of apples to take with him. It turns out that the apples were gathered by the villagers to show their gratitude. Isaac then tells the nanny to take another week off because it would be better for her to resume when Hinder has fully recovered. The nanny is surprised to hear this, and she asks Isaac if the head butler won't complain about this. Isaac shocks her, telling her that she is not going to be idle throughout the week. Isaac tells her to make jam with the apples, so he can eat it with wheat bread when she returns to work. The nanny agrees to this with a smile on her face and tells Isaac that she is going to make apple pie too. A week later, Isaac is seen jogging around the estate. During this time, his mana vessel had changed, and the 3 circuits had turned to 4. The mana vessel stabilized more too, and the number of magic spells he can simultaneously use increased to 4. He figures out that fighting the winter spiders and pushing himself to the limit probably helped with this. In addition, he knows that running around the estate contributed to it too. Basically, using magic requires comprehension and calculation, including intuition. This is a task that consumes a considerable amount of mental power. When the body breaks down, the mind breaks down too, and it is pretty obvious that mental power requires physical stamina. He knows that he reached his limit in the abandoned mine because he was donning an untrained young body. Isaac remembers that in his past life, Lucas used to train his stamina. Isaac is in the middle of his training when he is called upon by the head butler Schiller, who tells him that it is time for his regular checkup. The doctor walks forward to greet Isaac while asking him how he is feeling. Apparently, the dude is the personal doctor that was assigned to him by his father, and they claim he is the most successful doctor in the territory close to them. However, even the supposed expert doctor couldn't figure out his weird constitution. After he is done with the checkup, the doctor tells him that he is fine. He decides to change Isaac's medicine, but Isaac knows that he is just going to prescribe rubbish. The doctor reaches into his briefcase and reveals 6 bottles of a potion called Panacea. This is a potion that stabilizes the flow of mana. When Isaac sees this, he realizes that his father is going to extreme lengths to make sure he gets the good stuff. Basically, Panacea means cure-all in the common tongue, and it is used as a stimulant for some and a performance enhancer for soldiers. While the potion is known to stabilize the flow of mana, it is actually a misunderstanding that occurred while translating the ancient language. Its actual effect is stimulating the flow of mana, which means it is poison for him because his mana goes out of control. However, for his current situation, it is the right catalyst because if used well, it will help increase his mana circuits. After the doctor's departure, Isaac notices that Schiller is staring at him, and he asks him if he has anything to say. Schiller reveals his surprise that Isaac looks really calm because he is always throwing tantrums over being seen. Thanks to this, the doctors in the direct territory refuse to be his personal doctor, and Isaac asks Schiller if it would have been better if he had thrown a fit just as he used to. Schiller stays mute for a second before finally opening up, telling Isaac that he learned from Hans that he cured the children in Black Goose of pneumonia. When Isaac hears this, he realizes that Schiller had interrogated Hans. Schiller tells Isaac that it is going to become a big issue if the advisory committee finds out about it. Schiller then coldly tells Isaac that he is going to let it slide this time, but he urges Isaac to restrain himself. But if he can't, he tells Isaac that he should inform him first. Even in his past life, Isaac wasn't able to get close to Schiller because he was always dry and an unbending head butler. He is a supposed cold man who would always keep his distance from the others. However, according to what he heard from Jonas before he died, Schiller served the family until the very end, before losing his life. Deep down, Schiller cares a lot and only tries to act like a hard guy. Isaac then smiles, telling Schiller that he understands what he means by this. Schiller then asks Isaac if there is any particular reason why he has been running for the past couple of days. Isaac replies that throughout history, mages who reached the 5th class or higher trained their bodies, and since it is a body that channels mana, it should stay in a fit state. Later that night, Schiller writes his report about how Isaac cured the children of Black Goose Village of their pneumonia. Schiller believes that due to the nature of his constitution, it will be hard for him to use magic in the future. Schiller believes that a path as a scholar or alchemist might be right for him. He believes that with this, Isaac's father will also be relieved of some worry. Just then, a maid, Rosa, enters Schiller's office telling him that maids are disappearing. 2 girls, Clara and Annette, have vanished, and Rosa says she can actually vouch for Annette, if not Clara, that she is a good girl. In fact, Annette hasn't taken a day off in 3 years, which means something has definitely happened to her. Later on, Rosa is seen talking with another maid and a servant named Bill. Bill talks trash about the territory, saying it is not the best place to live because the weather is harsh in this area of the world, and the bandits or monsters always show up all the time. The other maid asks Bill if he is basically saying he is going to run away, and he casually replies that the possibility is not zero. The girl then says Annette is not like him, who can just disappear out of nowhere because she worked hard to pay for her father's medicine. Bill stupidly says the girl must have gotten sick of taking care of her sick dad, or maybe she ran off with some deadbeat dude. Rosa yells at Bill, telling him to watch his mouth, but Bill defends himself, saying he is just putting out his own theory. The two tell him that they are not interested in whatever theory he has. Bill continues by saying whatever is happening might be an action of dark magic. They ask him what he means by this, and he reminds them that they are working for a family of mages. In addition, Isaac is not in good condition, and he believes that his father is using whatever magic he can get his hands on to heal his son. This is when it dawns on Rosa and her colleague that Bill is saying that the missing girls were sacrificed alive. Rosa scolds him, telling him to stop spreading stupid rumors, reminding Bill that the master of the house took him in even though he was a criminal. The two are arguing with each other when Isaac appears behind them, telling Bill that he has a very interesting story. Isaac smiles at him, urging him to tell him more of the story, and Bill freaks out when he realizes that he has run his mouth in Isaac's presence. Isaac then takes Bill to his office to hear more from him. Bill reveals that the first maid who disappeared 2 months ago was Hilda, and a few weeks later, Clara went missing. It was the past weekend that Annette vanished after going to Mass. With a cold stare, Isaac asks him if he has any idea why this happened. Deep down, Bill is worried when he sees just how cold Isaac's glare is, and he replies that he has no idea what might have happened. Isaac then assures him that he can be honest and he won't punish him for it. Bill is forced to ask if Isaac is sure about what he is saying, and Isaac says yes. Bill stays mute for a minute, and Isaac asks him if he thinks the girls disappeared because of him. Bill stutters before saying it is quite obvious that it is related to him. He mentions that Hans is the closest to Isaac, and he is always bruised or injured. In addition, he is always complaining about one pain or the other. Bill continues running his mouth, saying he is pretty sure that Hans would be the one to die the most painful death of all. Bill stops talking immediately when he realizes that Isaac's mood has totally changed, and he starts freaking out, begging Isaac to spare his life. He talks about how he hasn't gotten married or even had any kids, and Isaac casually asks him if he wants to live. Isaac lets him know that if he wants to live, he would have to do some work for him. Later on, Isaac is seen in his room thinking about Rosa and Annette. In his past life, after Hans and his nanny died, they were the only maids who volunteered to serve him. Even when he tried to get rid of them, the two refused to leave. He even tells them to stop bringing him potions because they are useless. But the two urge Isaac not to give up hope because everything will definitely get better. Isaac didn't really take this well, telling them how bad it is to kill someone he loves with his own hands. Isaac screams at them, asking them if they know how it feels, and Annette steps up, telling Isaac that she knows because she caused her friend's death with her own hands. Isaac is surprised to hear this, and he asks for more details. Annette reveals that it happened in the past, saying she might have been able to save Clara if she had reached out to her. Annette walks up to Isaac, telling him that she understands his unique situation. However, she lets him know that anyone can end up doing things that they never intended. She calmly tells Isaac that it can happen to anyone once in their lives. Surprisingly, Annette's talk was able to bring him comfort back then. Now, in the present, Isaac regrets that he didn't ask for more details. Moments later, Bill shows up in the room, and it appears that Isaac had given him a mission to find out where the maids went. Bill confidently says he has because it didn't even take him long. Bill claims that he asked around among beggars near the roads, and their descriptions matched perfectly. Isaac asks him what he found out, and Bill replies that the conclusion was that they were grabbed by slave traders. He says the slave traders trick people by saying they will take them to the prosperous South but end up selling them off. Isaac expresses his confusion, saying they could have gone to the South on their own without a broker if they wanted to. Bill then tells Isaac that he has it all wrong because the road to the South is dangerous and treacherous, which is why they needed someone to protect them throughout the journey. After saying this, Isaac agrees with him, saying his theory makes sense, but deep down, Bill has an agenda. He assumes that Isaac is still a kid and that he is clueless about how the world works. Bill then tells Isaac that it cost him a lot of money to get the beggars to talk, so he has spent all 20 silver coins that he gave him as travel funds. Isaac is surprised to hear this because the amount is enough for half a year's wages. Bill claims that everyone was on guard, and Isaac tells him that he doesn't really care about the money because what he wants is to find the maids as quickly as he can. Bill lets off a huge smile when he hears this, and he immediately asks Isaac if there is something else he wants him to do. Isaac says yes, assuring him that he is going to be well compensated for this. Bill celebrates deeply when he hears this because, to him, he has found a sucker. He is convinced that if he plays Isaac right, things will become lucrative for him. He sees Isaac as a freshly laid golden egg, but the only flaw is that Isaac is a ticking time bomb. Nonetheless, he is not worried because there is no reward without a bit of risk. With a smile on his face, he tells Isaac that he can lead him to the broker. But everything happens in a flash, and when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a cell in only his underwear. He screams out in shock, asking how he got into a cell, but unknown to him, Isaac is standing behind him with a runestone in his hand, and he is coldly smiling at the dude's misfortune.